All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's quarter after on a Sunday night, and here we are. We're the Brushfire Mind. Well, it's been a week. It has been a week. And wow, but Donald has not disappointed. Now, we're going to get into that a little bit. We're going to have a little conversation about executive actions, how they work, and what they mean. But first, you guessed it, it's time for the fallacy of the week. Now, I'm having a little trouble here. We have a good fallacy of the week this week. We'll get into it in just a second. But this will only be the third actual fallacy of the week we've done. We started at the beginning of the year. Last week, we kind of recapped because the fallacy of the week from the previous week, the false equivalency fallacy, just got so much play throughout the week leading up to our last episode. And again, this week, I'm seeing a trend here. My intent was to, and still is if I can, to address a different major logical fallacy at the beginning of the show every week, and to reference the kind of media commentary of the week and point out where that particular logical fallacy has occurred. But here's the thing. Just like the left don't math, apparently they don't logic either. The thing that's killing me, the thing that's going to make it difficult going forward to do a different logical fallacy every week and tie it into the current narrative, is that from all the evidence available to us thus far, the left just isn't capable of the sort of advanced thought required to escape the use of the two basic fallacies we've already covered. They seem pretty well trapped in straw man arguments. And no, Rod, straight up lying is not a logical fallacy. We'll get to that in a minute. Funny you should mention that. But they seem to be just totally trapped with straw man arguments, false equivalencies, and ad hominems. That's what they've got. They can't make a statement. They can't form a sentence in argument that is not either a straw man fallacy, a false equivalency, or just a straight up ad hominem. Which brings us, ladies and gentlemen, to the fallacy of the week. This week is the ad hominem. On the face of it, it's this simple. If I say you're a dick, and therefore your argument is invalid, that is an ad hominem. If I say your argument is invalid, here's the evidence to support that claim. Oh, and also you're a dick. That is not an ad hominem. So what an ad hominem is given an argument, instead of rebutting the argument, supplying evidence or additional argument or positions to refute the claim of your opponent, you attack the credibility of the arguer. So when you choose to take on your interlocutor and accuse them of being, for whatever reason, unreliable, untrustworthy, etc., that is the fallacy of the ad hominem attack. You're a dick, therefore your argument is invalid. Now, we've got a viewer out here that's asking about straight up lying. Is that a logical fallacy? No, it's actually not. Straight up lying is exactly that. It's straight up lying. Just because your position is just because your stated facts are incorrect, the truth of the matter is that for the functions of an argument, what you've done is you've placed the onus of proving that on your interlocutor. So if you say, let's see, what's a big lie? Let's say, for example, you argue that climate change is a thing because 97% of all scientists agree that it's a thing. Well, it may be that statement is utterly fallacious, is completely erroneous, but you have functionally placed on me, the arguer, the onus of proving that to be untrue. Now, that's pretty easily proven to be untrue. We did have the letters from the university that showed that there was this big conspiracy there, and more importantly, that whole 97% thing was really just pulled out of somebody's ass. And I'm not going to dig into the depths of that, because this show is not about climate change. That's just one example of a big lie. I can refer you to, in fact, Lord Monkton. Go look up Lord Monkton on YouTube, and he will explain to you the whole fib about the 97% consensus. Now, as far as an ad hominem, calling somebody a liar, you're a liar, and therefore your argument is invalid. That's an ad hominem. You're a liar, and we know this to be true, and here is actual evidence to support my claim that your word cannot be taken at face value because you have a history of lying. Therefore, your argument is refuted. That is different. That is not an ad hominem attack. Viewer asks another question. Moving party has to prove his case. Not necessarily. Almost always no. But here's the problem with the question of straight up lying. If one arguer posits a position, it is not adequate that I simply say his position is false. If I want to accuse someone of lying, then I need to be able to prove that he is lying. It's different to prove that his statement is not true, because it's impossible to prove a negative. It is not, however, impossible to prove that the contrary is correct. So, for example, it may be impossible to prove that my microphone is not black. It is, however, possible to prove that my microphone is white. If my microphone is white, it is therefore not black.
Racist.
Now that's a super simplified and frankly a little. I mean, it's generally an adequate example, but it's the one that's close to hand. And as the Nazi Heidegger told us, things that are close at hand are utility. So no, the moving party doesn't necessarily have to prove his case necessarily, except that if your position is going to be that your opponent is lying, then you have to prove that he's lying, or at least that his history of fabrication is such that it should be expected of him. Frankly, that is not the usual ad hominem. The usual ad hominem is your argument is invalid because you're a racist, or you're a misogynist, or you're a homophobe, or you're a xenophobe, or blah, 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 blah. If you call me a name, then your argument is invalid. If that's all you've got, then your argument is invalid. If your position is that I am a racist, for example, prove it. Show me evidence. You haven't any. And the fact that you don't have any evidence of any kind whatsoever to prove the rest of your argument is the reason that you've resorted to the ad hominem by calling me a racist. You don't have an argument, and so you're falling back on your inadequacy as a human being and a thinking individual. So that's the ad hominem. You're going to see a lot of that. So that's what you see all the time. Ad hominem, ad hominem, ad hominem. Now, I'm going to refer back to Facebook. A lot of our show tonight, we're going to be talking about some stuff that's been on Facebook. We're going to be talking about stuff that's been on Facebook lately, and we're going to be talking about Trump's executive orders. So I just want to bring out one. Earlier on Facebook, there was something about Trump's executive order to put a moratorium on immigration from certain countries, and the left is all jumping up and down. Oh, you noticed that he didn't put a moratorium against These three countries where he has big business dealings. Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
it's all about a conflict of interest. To which I responded, I would like to point out that the refugee crisis is pouring out of these other countries that we did put a moratorium on. And the moratorium isn't even against all of the countries from which the big problem refugee crises are coming. The interesting thing about Trump's moratorium on immigration and new visas from these areas is that, like all of the rest of his executive orders to date, which we're going to address, is the fact that there was a law passed by Congress, signed into law by Barack Obama, creating this moratorium, enforcing this moratorium back in 2011. And just like with the wall, with everything else that Trump's done by executive order, what he has done is he has issued an order to the agencies of law enforcement, which is the purview of the executive branch of the U.S. government, to enforce the law in a directed way. The law was already created. It was put there by the last president. Yes, Barack Obama created the moratorium on immigration from Muslim countries.
No, he didn't.
In 2011, yes.
Okay, I guess he did.
And so Donald Trump has issued an executive order ordering law enforcement agencies to continue to enforce that rule for a couple of months. It's not like he said, no more fuckers can come here. He didn't do that.
Can I just point out something else too? Because I've seen several versions of the same meme where suspiciously Egypt and Saudi Arabia and the UAE are left off of this list. So, let's see. What do they control? Oh, that's right, the Red Sea and the Strait of Hormuz. Anybody want to guess what happens to the price of oil if the Strait of Hormuz closes? Anybody want to guess what happens? It's $10 a gallon almost overnight. So it's not just that, and if you really want to go deep into the strategy, there's a very good reason outside of the economic one for leaving them off the list. There's value in funneling the bad guys in a certain direction. And Chris, you could probably speak on this better than I could, but you've expressed to me more than once that the purpose of a minefield is not so that the enemy will step on the mines, but so that the enemy will not even attempt to walk through the minefield.
That's correct. And for reasons of national security, I'm not going to go into too much explanation there. But the job of people that put mines and fences in the ground is to tell you where not to go. And where not to go is everywhere that they don't want you to be so that you're more easily targeted. I'm not going to expand on that a lot for a lot of reasons, but yeah. There are very, very good strategic reasons to leave only certain countries open. And I would also like to point out that what is being advanced by the argument of memes like this is that Donald Trump has left these particular countries off of the list because he has business interests there. What I would like to point out is, no, Donald Trump, who signed an executive order that says enforce this already existing law, did not choose which countries to leave off of that list because that decision was made by Barack Hussein Obama previously when he instructed the law to be constructed to begin with. So if there is a conflict of interest, it existed with Obama prior to Trump's even announcing his nomination, because this law was crafted in 2011.
I'd also like to take that and kind of put the logic in reverse as well. Okay, so Trump left Egypt off the list because he has hotels in Egypt. Well, then why did he include Somalia? Trump doesn't have hotels in Somalia. In fact, most people don't have hotels in Somalia because it's Somalia. It is a really super poor, crime-ridden place. The pirates, the Barbary Coast pirates that we read about in our history books come from Somalia. That section of Africa has been an awful place to live for centuries. So no, 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 no. It has nothing to do with where Trump does or does not have a hotel. Because who says, I know, I want a vacation in Sudan. That's it. And when I'm done in Sudan, I want to have a quick stopover in Somalia. And then, buddy, I'll be so relaxed. I'll be ready to go home. I'll be hungry because I just went through Sudan and Somalia. But whatever. I'll be tired of eating palm trees because they eat a lot of them there. It's about all they got.
I'm sorry. I am kind of somebody who would like to vacation in those places with my thumbs on the trigger, my thumbs on the butterfly. So
it's not a vacation if you get paid to do it.
Yeah, quick anecdote about Somalia. While I was in Afghanistan, we had a civilian. Let's see. How do I say this? We had a civilian security consultant working with us briefly, who got replaced by another one. And what happened was, the company that he contracted with called him and said, "Hey, we'll call him Joe. Hey, Joe, you're the only guy in our company that has any boating experience on his resume. So we're sending somebody out to replace you if you'd like to take this assignment to go and train pirate hunters in Somalia." It is the most jealous I have ever been. Yeah. He left us and went to train people to hunt pirates in Somalia. Yeah.
So this goes back to fake news, I think, and in a lot of ways it is an ad hominem. We've already set up Trump to be this big, massive racist that's just trying to put the capstone on his big, amazing, egocentric life, and his grandkids are going to be rich forever because of what he's done while he's president. Like not building hotels in Somalia. This really goes back to the whole fake news thing. I actually saw a lot of this imagery that you see being passed around from Facebook came from a piece that Fareed Zakaria did. Now, it's entirely possible that because this is Fareed Zakaria, the imagery existed and then he borrowed it because this is Fareed Zakaria we're talking about. But he has this whole piece where he basically asserts that this is Trump. He's fear-mongering. And that it's awfully suspicious that these countries that he left off the list, he had hotels in. Didn't mention once that these countries had controlling stakes in OPEC, or that they control the Red Sea or the Strait of Hormuz, and that you could have an international crisis because it's not just our gas that would be $10 a gallon. It would be Russia's gas that was $10 a gallon, and it would be China's gas that was $10 a gallon. You want to talk about World War III overnight? That could do it.
Yeah, but they can't math. Also, thank you, Rod. Turkey is in NATO.
Oops.
I mean, So, okay, so we got off on that a little bit. Let me back up a little bit. So I dropped a response on this to one of the guys that dropped it on Facebook. And I said, it's funny. The countries that stayed off the list are pretty wealthy, and they're not generating refugees. One of the things that has bothered me the whole time this has been going on is that you've got refugees pouring out of these poor countries, these civil war torn, poverty ridden countries. You've got these refugees pouring out into Europe, most especially, and with them come these rape gangs like the ones that we saw most notably in Cologne on New Year's of last year. Literally thousands of men who were all refugees communicated with each other on social media and decided to just go out and rape all night on New Year's Eve. And the simple fact was they committed so many rapes that night that the cops just couldn't keep up. So I point this out about the rape gangs, and old boy drops this post about some college football team in America that's been accused of several rapes, and says, "Well, we condone it here." To which I responded, because this, like I was saying before, these liberals, their minds are limited. They've only got really 3 weapons in their toolbox: straw man, false equivalency, and the ad hominem.
Racist.
Yep. I thought that was pretty clever, and you weren't even watching, Cameron. Straw man and ad hominem. Anyway, so he drops this bombshell. Oh, well, there's this college that got accused of a bunch of rapes. I'm like, so your argument is we already have rape gangs, ergo we should have more? I mean, help me out here, Cameron. If I say rape gangs are bad, therefore we shouldn't bring in rape gangs, and your argument begins with, well, here's an example of a rape gang that's already here. What am I supposed to do with that?
You know, this ties into another meme that I see on Facebook a lot. It's usually a picture of an Indian and or a group of Native Americans or whatever, and the text almost always says something to the effect of, it's a good thing they didn't enforce their borders the same way that we want to enforce ours. And what's funny is every time I see it, I have the same thought. Maybe they should have. Maybe the world would be a completely different place if they had. And by that same extension, you're suggesting that since we just, raped and pillaged and did all the terrible things to the American Indian that the left likes to say that we did to the American Indian, we need to act exactly like them and expose ourselves to potential rape and pillage. Check.
Yeah. You know what? If our show's going to be about intelligent, free thought, good argument, we need a better left. Dear brain-dripping liberals, I implore you, think better, argue better, bring me some real red meat for my mind to chew on. Because frankly, this lettuce bullshit that you're slinging just goes right through me. So Cameron, let's talk about, we got to get away from, I can't talk about leftist arguments anymore because it's not hard enough to think about. Let's dig into Trump's executive actions. You want to start, or you want me to take over, or you want me to keep
Well, let me start by saying that on the one hand, I do appreciate the people that are worried about the flurry of executive activity that has come from Trump. I think a lot of those fears are largely ungrounded, of course, but I can appreciate it. And I actually think that the judges, because it is multiple judges now that have found fault with part or all of Trump's executive order immigration ban, which is funny because these are judges that did not at all have a problem with it a few years ago in 2011 when Obama did it, but whatever. But these judges that have blocked his ban, I actually think that the smartest thing that Trump could do would be to let it happen. I mean, he's already got like 14 other things in the pipe right now that he can work on. And I think this is an opportunity for him to not only be Trump and kind of tweak him, but actually show a whole lot of class about it. Like, well, what, you think I'm just going to steamroll a federal judge? That's not works. Bigly, I tell you, that's not how this works. And and basically he maintains the position of said, you know what, we'll let our people look at it. And when the left says, well, what are you going to do? And he says, we'll let you know. Because anytime Trump leaves them hanging, man, he wins. Well, what's he going to do? 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 Well, nothing, because the judge told him he can't do anything. So he's going to take it back to his lawyers. And what's going to end up happening is some bill that a guy named Ted Cruz has already written that includes 25 countries instead of 7 is going to come around and is going to get passed, and it's going to go through the Congress and the Senate. And then and then what? Then what does a federal judge do? I mean, they can always throw up roadblocks. They have no problem doing it. But in this case, I think because everybody is so terrified that Donald Trump is going to be Hitler, he could go a long way by temporarily, at least in public, giving in to this judge. Plus, I mean, screw it. Fine. Take that time and energy and devote it to building the wall, or the Dakota Access Pipeline, or the Keystone Pipeline, or any of these other things that you've signed executive actions on. Oh, and I will point out that if there's any of them that I think are absolutely brilliant, the one that I think is the absolute best is, in fact, the Keystone Pipeline and the Dakota Access Pipeline, because you want to create a stronger position in the world and give economic prosperity to the people here at home. Those two things do it. You know why we have a terrorism problem with the Middle East? Really? Really? Because we keep buying their damned oil. You know why Saudi Arabia is not on that list? Because they could screw us if they wanted to. They could. They wouldn't even have to fire a shot. They could lock down the entire world market on oil if they wanted to. And yes, of course, you can get oil from Canada and from Venezuela and from several different countries. But who's the big daddy on the block? Like this one. If we would set up, pipelines and things like that. So that's out of all of his executive actions, those are my favorite. And as you have pointed out, the Keystone Pipeline is something that Obama slowed down. The Dakota Access Pipeline is something that Obama slowed down. Trump didn't go in and wave a magic wand and say, I hereby decree there will be a Dakota Access Pipeline. No, 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 no. The Dakota Access Pipeline was approved and then stalled, and now he's reapproved it.
No, he hasn't reapproved it. He's installed it. he came up and he pulled somebody up. He pulled Obama's finger out of the dike. Oh. And Rod makes a good point on the chat. Thanks for hanging out and chatting with us, Rod. But Rod makes a good point. Dapple was largely completed already anyway. Now, and I'd like to say this about that too. A very close friend of mine, somebody whose opinion I respect deeply, mentioned earlier that maybe the rest of the people ought to just get used to this idea of eminent domain, because white people have to deal with that shit too. But here's the thing, dear friend who I care about and respect deeply, with Dapple, there's no eminent domain going on here. The all the land that the pipe actually crosses was signed over by the landowners for that purpose. Every landowner owning land which is crossed by the pipeline signed on to the pipeline crossing their land. It's that simple. And the tribal elders and all of them were invited to several meetings about the pipeline before they began construction. before they began construction. And then later they decided they had a problem with it. I'm sorry. This is not the Vogons filing your planetary destruction order in your nearest local star cluster. Okay, this was the representatives of the agency, the Army Corps of Engineers, and the several companies involved in the projects sending letters directly to the elders involved and contacting the individual landowners and appropriate licensing authorities and securing active authorization from all parties concerned. The exception to that statement is the tribal elders who just didn't show up when they were invited to the conversation. And I would like to point out also that those tribal elders who didn't show up were invited as a courtesy, because we are not talking in that case about people who had actual title, deed, or claim on the land in question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not the Vogons?
No. Nope.
Are you sure?
Positive.
But wait, real quick, for everybody's.
I've seen the Army. They're green, but they're not that green.
Seriously, real quick though, for everybody's benefit. So long, so long, so long, and thanks for all the fish.
Oh, and in other news, the babblefish is a real thing now. Back to you, Cameron.
No, I'm sorry. You've just kind of blown my mind. If universal translators are real, I can only imagine.
Alrighty.
I don't want to get spun off on the babblefish, but I mean,
I'll spin off for you.
But we are talking about a small yellow fish that feeds on brainwave patterns. You know what I always wondered about the babblefish too?
Fish.
You know what I always wondered about the babblefish too? If it only goes in one ear, how come you can always hear the correct language in both ears? Wouldn't it be really confusing? Wouldn't that be like having a TV in English in one room and in Spanish in the next room, and they're both really loud?
Actually, no. As somebody who has suffered massive hearing loss in both ears, but slightly less in one than the other, the thing is, the brain is incredibly good at kind of falsifying the data you get and creating the illusion of similar hearing in both ears.
Wow. Okay. We just went from science fiction to science, people.
Yeah, that's a real thing. And I learned that after my right ear was severely perforated by an IED and my left ear was just impacted by an IED, and now I have this one looks like Swiss cheese and this one doesn't move very much. And on the daily, I have this impression that I hear the same in both ears until it's coming from one direction specifically. So it's hearing loss is a bitch because it happens slowly and it happens gradually and it happens kind of intermittently. I could do a whole show just on that. But here.
So hashtag PTSD science.
I'm going to share a little something with you real quick.
When I met a French girl. Elodie, put this in your ear.
Je mets ça dans mon oreille?
Put it in your ear.
Comme ça?
Yeah.
Ok.
Can you hear me in French?
Pouvez-vous me entendre en français? Oui! Je peux t'entendre parler français?
Yes, I can hear you talk French.
Comment ça se fait?
But this is awesome. But how you do it?
This little wearable uses translation technology to allow two people to speak different languages, but still clearly understand each other. It's the dream, you know? A life untethered, free of language barriers. It's just that it's no longer a dream anymore. It's real.
So there you go. Babelfish, now a thing.
Wow. That's impressive. I would color mine yellow just to see how many people got it.
Damn right.
Yeah, okay, man. Hashtag PTSD science. Speaking of hashtags, we're in the last 10 minutes of the show, which means we get to come to my favorite hashtag of the show.
All right.
And what's my favorite hashtag, Chris? Tell the world about it while I pull the article up.
Oh, well, ladies and gentlemen, as I hope you're beginning to catch on over the last several weeks, the Brushfire Mind has added a new segment that we're doing every week, and I'm working on a splash screen for the better parts of the segment, which we will be calling the hashtag DRT. I'm going to let Cameron explain to you in a minute, but for now, it's time for hashtag White Hats Matter. Heartwarming stories of death and destruction. Cameron, you'll take it away.
Okay, so in our White Hats Matter, aka or hashtag Good Guy with a Gun, this week comes to us from Columbia, South Carolina. On January 27th at 7 p.m. at a popular barber and beauty salon in Columbia, South Carolina, two armed men enter the business and take it over. And they begin to, basically, when they say take it over, they take the building over. The fear was real. Chauncey Harris, a witness, describes the situation this way. Several people, including children, were inside the business when two armed men started making demands and started stealing money. Witnessed it all unfold. He said that he smacked me in the back of the head, and I said, okay, this is probably it. When he's going to shoot me now and just set an example and walk out the door with the money. And that's an actual quote, by the way. The guy was obviously pretty darn scared. And then the best part happens. It turns out that not one, but two of the patrons were carrying concealed, and one of them, from his chair that he never even got up from, pulled his gun out and began firing. One of the two suspects died at the scene. So hashtag DRT, as in dead right there.
Amen.
Hashtag DRT. And you know what's great about that? And this sounds really awful, but it is the God's honest truth. I wish more people were wounded and or killed as they committed violent crimes, because A, you would thin out the herd of people that commit violent crimes quickly, and then that were left that were on the fence. Well, it's a whole lot different when you might get two slugs in the gut for going and knocking over a barber shop.
Yep. So thank you, kind citizen, for making your white hat matter. Now, before we close the show tonight, I want to go back to last week's White Hats Matter, and talk a little bit about Thomas Yoxel. And brother, I hope I'm pronouncing that last name right. Yoxel. I'm not certain, but Thomas Yoxel was our white hat last week. And Thomas Yoxel, when you go to the Brushfire Mind Facebook page, we don't have time to show you the video tonight, but Cameron has been kind enough to share the press event that he did. He's a rough-looking dude. Kind of a young white guy, tatted up, pretty serious. Here's the thing. On this show, we have talked often about the Second Amendment, about felons' rights, about whether or not a felon should have their rights taken. I'm a little on the fence about it. I believe that if you want to argue that you can strip a man of his citizenship, then you should feel free to take away his Second Amendment rights. But if, in the strict spirit of the 14th Amendment and equal protection under the law, we're going to argue that a man loses his rights when he becomes a felon, then if he loses the right to carry a weapon, if he loses the right to vote, then he also loses the right to a trial by his peers. He actually does functionally lose his Fourth Amendment protection to privacy and the like. Once you're a felon, an officer could search your home at will, at random, and without prejudice.
Or with extreme prejudice, you racist.
Exactly. I apologize. I misspoke. But Thomas Yoxel is a restored felon. He was a felon. His penalty, his debt to society considered paid in full. He has had his rights restored and is now a legal gun carrier who saved the life of a trooper in Arizona from an attacking illegal immigrant. I mean, the story has everything, man. It has everything. The rights of a felon were restored after he paid his debt to society. He has shown apparently that, at least in the eyes of enough lawyers and judges, that he is adequately reformed to return to the world and to carry a weapon like a responsible citizen again. And he has used that weapon in the defense of not just an American citizen, but an American public servant in the line of duty whose life was threatened by a criminal alien, a hostile foreign invader who sought to murder one of our sacred public servants. This story has everything. So, Thomas, brother, you're the only one who's gotten this from us so far. 2 weeks in a row, we talked about what you did, and brother, we appreciate you. So God's bless you. And for the rest of you, America, it is 2100 on a Sunday night. That's it for us tonight. So as we go forward, I leave you with this. If you build a man a fire, you'll keep him warm for the evening. But if you set a man on fire, he'll be warm for the rest of his life. Good night.
Witness!